Welcome to Learning Life Skills Together. This is our weekly community Zoom meeting where our guests help us to go deeper into the 4 life skills and open up a huge array of chances to practice them. Hello, everyone. This is number 62 in our Learning Life Skills Together Zoom meetings. And it's also number 3 in the series that we've been doing about each of the skills. And so skill number 3 is resilience, or getting through tough times. So we want to take a look at that. And the way we've been looking at things has been through a famous poem or a famous quote from a poem or something old and really profound. So maybe something that we've all heard before, because our life skills, all 4 of them, are things that we know, that we've heard before, and that we know are things to do that will help us and help our children with their mental health. So what I'd like to start with then is a little piece of an Emily Dickinson poem, definitely one of her most famous ones. And so the 4 lines go like this. Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And so it's this idea of hope as something that's within us always, and something that makes itself known always. Sometimes, though, we have to tune into it. So when we're thinking about these times when things are not going the way we'd like, and we just need to get through that because it's a problem we don't understand and haven't figured out, or it's just something that will come to an end and we need to get through to the other side, right? Now, as grown-ups, we've all had those experiences. We all know that bird really can keep up its song even when we're not listening, even when we're really distracted and suffering. But our kids really don't necessarily know that. And so to help them with this idea of resilience, we need to reflect and sort of practice these ways of getting back in touch, knowing that we're going to get through. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Emily Dickinson, I think, had a deep idea of what she was talking about. And so when we think about these moments in our lives, these times in our lives that we have gotten through, sometimes we get through them by force. Sometimes we just have to bull our way through, as my mother would have said. And so that is okay, but it wears us down. And so we need to remember in all of this, in, facing these difficult times, that it's kind of our best way through is to turn and look at what it is that's difficult for us and see if we can understand what we have to do next, what the next thing is that will make sense, that will help us to get through or even to solve what's going on with us. So we need to turn and look. We don't turn away and sort of run away from it. We have to look. And when we've had enough looking, when we're wearing ourselves out, we need a break. And so we need to give ourselves a sense of either being able to have the thoughts that we're having and deal with it, or we need to be able to make those thoughts get smaller, make that whole problem get smaller so that we can feel bigger. And so we can look at those two ways of working. And so I want to say that one way of working is to say, well, I'm worrying about this. I'm worrying about this. I'm worrying about this. I have spent the time productively thinking it through for a while. So to do that, we need to use our skill of emotion regulation and calm ourselves a little bit. So maybe it's taking some deep breaths that gets us there. Maybe it's feeling our feet on the floor that gets us to a place where we can look and pay attention and think about what we need. And so this is great. But then when we've worn ourselves out, if we've worn ourselves out, we need a break, right? And so sometimes we can't just turn off that flow of thoughts. They just keep coming at us. And that's not comfortable, not fun, and doesn't give us a break, right? So one thing we can do is to allow those things to be here because they are right now. And we know that hope is singing in the background, right? We know that the bird is singing. So, what can we do? We can do some really simple things like the 3 breaths, like feeling our feet on the floor, and we can also just do something that helps us to allow that situation, to allow those thoughts to continue without without us fighting with them, without making a big deal of it, so that they're just there and then go. So here's one way we can do that. And in the course, in the module number 4 about resilience, there are many of these things that we can do. But one that we can do is to think of our thoughts that we're having, those difficult, unpleasant thoughts that keep coming back, just as leaves that are floating down a stream. And so we can set aside a few minutes and just say, all right, I'm going to sit down on the bank of this stream and I'm going to watch the water flowing. And you could do this right now if you have the chance, if you're in a place where you could do this and maybe even close your eyes. So just imagining you're on the bank of the stream. It's a nice day. The grass is dry. It's green. It's springy. The water is flowing by in front of you, and you see leaves sort of falling and floating downstream. So as you watch a leaf, you see that it comes into view and then it goes out of view and it's gone. And so this is how we can think of and picture our thoughts. So our thoughts come into view, we see them there, we don't get involved, we don't fight with them, we don't hold them back. We just let them float on down the stream, and eventually they're out of sight. Now, sometimes they come back, but that's just another leaf that looks the same. And so it too can float downstream. So maybe you can give yourself a break sometimes from all that spinning in your head, just to let the thoughts go by. Let them be leaves floating away on the stream. And that can even be relaxing because you're imagining sitting by a stream. You're maybe even hearing the water in your mind's ear and seeing those leaves float by in your mind's eye. So there's one little strategy. Now, the other strategy to make the problem, to make the thing that's going on that we're trying to get through, to make it less of a deal, is to get interested in something else. And so this is a really important skill for our kids to develop so that they're not just fussing and fussing with what's going wrong, but to say, I have my project, I have this painting that I'm working on, I have this story that I'm writing, I am trying to see how many birds I can see in the neighborhood and identify them all. Whatever it might be that sort of fits in with how your child um, is in the world. It might be, I want to hear that record again, that album of songs. I want to hear that piece again. And so we go to that and we really listen. We don't play it in the background and fuss and fight. We really listen and let it take us, or we look at our favorite picture book, whatever it happens to be, whatever our thing of the moment is that we're doing. So as we get involved in it, as we let ourselves go into it, the size of the thing we're worried about gets smaller, and we see that we're actually much bigger than that. We're capable of worrying about that, but we're also capable of learning this song on the guitar or piano. We're capable of knitting this sweater that we're trying to get through, So this is a really deep and life-giving, life-sustaining, and lifelong skill that we can help our kids to develop, is to have something that's meaningful that we make or do. And so what might that be? In learning life skills together, we are working through one thing we can do is exercise. And so to go for a long run, or to do some heavy lifting or some um, long repetitive sets of lifting weights, something like that, also takes us out of our little squeezed up self that's all wrapped around that problem and opens us up and lets us see how much bigger we are. We can also, as we've talked about, experiencing awe and beauty. So going outside and just looking up and looking at the clouds and seeing what they're making, seeing what's going on in the sky, watching the trees move in the breeze. That kind of beauty, as well as the beauty that we can encounter again in some piece of music, in a work of art that we want to study, that we want to really get to know. All of these things help us bring down that sense of, I'm never going to get through this, to, oh, I'm much bigger than this. There's a lot more going on for me. And you know what? I can hear the bird singing the tune without words that never stops. I can see that there is hope here. And so we need to help our kids to do this. We need to help them discover these possibilities, these ways of being with themselves, and these ways of maybe touching into being bigger than their problem and knowing that there's that hope, a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. So we have one more in this series on the 4 skills, the life skills.